Hey everyone, my guest today is Michelle Stiles. A teacher by nature and a contrarian by design, Michelle has the keen ability to simplify the complex and make seminal older works accessible to the modern mind in a fresh and easy rendering. She has previously authored three works: Fast Track to Your Recovery from a Total Knee Replacement, How to Eliminate Pain and Pain Medicine the Quickest Way Possible, Color and Laugh Your Way to Knee Replacement Recovery, and finally, One Idea to Rule Them All: Reverse Engineering American Propaganda, Book One of a Trilogy. The second book in the trilogy will be out soon, titled One Idea to Rule Them All: Reverse Engineering Democracy Theater. While the writing of the books about propaganda by a physical therapist may seem like a metaphysical oddity or quirk of the universe, it is simply the product of an active mind in the quest for truth. Welcome to the show, Michelle. I want to thank you for being here today, especially on a Friday.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
Yeah, same here. I was wondering, basically, if you wanted to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you're working on right now.
Okay, well, I'm working on a second book on the area of propaganda. That is not my background. I am a healthcare worker who got interested in this about 17 years ago. So you say, well, why should I listen to you? What do you know? You know, you're coming from a completely different space. But I felt like I should, for some reason, I was seeing things in the political realm. I saw some local corruption, and I said, I want to just study propaganda, which is just a weird idea. So I stumbled on George Creel, How We Advertised America. And now, this was about George Creel, if you're familiar, was the head of the Committee on Public Information in World War One. Now,
Oh,
I don't know about
okay.
you, but I pretty much slept through social studies class. Okay, like I didn't get, got your basic
Yeah.
amount to get out of there. But I kept asking people, well, first of all, you advertising a war just sort of just is offensive, right?
Mhm.
You either have good, especially as a democracy, you either have good reasons to go to war, which you then share, versus advertising it. So when I read it, it was his like kind of victory lap after the war. And like, we did this, we spent 6 million of a slush fund out of the presidential commission. And I'm like turning to my friends and going, did you know this? We were doing this, because we look at
Yeah.
the current political landscape and we think, what a mess, right? I
Yeah.
mean, what a mess. And so
Yeah.
propaganda, the term propaganda has snuck into the lexicon again, when actually me growing up, if you would have said that America is involved in propaganda, that would have been an oxymoron. Like, American propaganda would have been something people went, well,
Yeah.
democracies don't do that. We have a free press, right?
Yeah.
So that's what started me thinking. And the reason why I can be, like, why you might say, hey, this person might know something, is because I could move out of this academic swim lanes. This
Mhm.
is a topic that is highly complicated. It spans across psychology, journalism, sociology, even statistics, right? And political science, right? And so there's
Mhm.
this broad range of things that when you're trying to understand it, you have to navigate across.
Yeah.
I didn't have any problem doing that because I wasn't, doing an academic dissertation for a sociology degree or anything like that. So what I found was really absolutely amazing. And so, um, that's kind of my story, and working on book two now. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I liked how you described it as kind of swimming in different lanes.
Mhm.
Because like when I decided to start a podcast, like I have a good job, but it doesn't fill my
Yeah.
creative needs, and
Hmm.
it's loosely related to what I went to school for. I love plants and animals, and it's like,
Hmm.
okay, so that's almost where it was like, okay, so what lane can I,
Yeah.
get into as far as my passion. And so then I started in politics, but then, as you know, like politics can clash with science and other things,
Oh
and
yeah, for sure.
it yeah, you almost have to think of them separately sometimes, even though they're all interconnected, if that
Yeah.
makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, and but then you can move from one to the other because nothing's locking you into. You're
Yeah.
following your own mind, and expanding it wherever truth, moves you. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So, why are the majority of beliefs based in facts? Or not facts. Sorry, not facts, but trust.
Right. Okay. Well, let me ask you, let me turn this around and say, if
Okay.
I said the word propaganda,
Uh-huh.
okay, give me three words that first come up to your mind.
Shady, manipulative.
Okay.
um, and yeah, I guess untrustworthy would be the
Okay. So it's just
or
it's just it's
false.
mostly deceitful somehow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, for a lot of people, what comes up is like Hitler, of course, lies and disinformation.
Mhm.
So that, I'm just telling you things that just flat aren't true. Right.
Mhm.
And what I learned when I went back and I studied Le Bon, Gustave Le Bon wrote a book, The Crowd, A Study of the Popular Mind. And he did this in late 1800s. He was a Frenchman. And so you read that book, and anybody really that does read it goes, oh, this is like so contemporary, right? So if
Uh,
that's actually true, and it is, because you're like, oh, this just fits into our society,
yeah.
then I said, well, he must be saying something true about human nature because he's saying it's not facts and reason. All right. And
Mhm.
so, what is it about human nature that makes us vulnerable to other things? And so, um, one of the ways to think about it is in as a society comes together and becomes a little bit more complex, we look to others. Like, first of all, we use our experience to tell us about, just think about this: seeing is believing, right? Doubting
Uh-huh.
Thomas said, "If I can see, I'll believe." Um, the judicial system discounts hearsay, but elevates an eyewitness, right? You
Mhm.
saw it. So we believe you better than somebody just heard about it. So
Yeah.
in our in our experience level or in our local realm, we trust our eyes, our experience, okay? We also trust authorities, right? So if we don't have the information or the knowledge about something, and again, now as society gets a little more complex, we have to trust other people because we can't know everything, unless
Mhm.
we're that hermit living on a, I mean, that has to know everything about his house, his the weather, we're not that.
Yeah.
We live in a society. So we trust our eyes, we trust the experts, and we trust what other people are saying and doing. We're a herd animal in a sense, right? So if
Yeah.
everybody goes, we're in a theater and somebody yells fire, we're running, we're
Yep.
running in the direction everybody else is running. We're not going to ask questions. We're like, I don't want to be the odd man out standing here. So,
Yeah.
and that happens in life too. Like, if we can't make a decision based on our eyes, based on our the authorities, we just don't trust them, and we're just going to go look around and go, well, I'll probably be safe if I do what 90% of the rest of the culture is doing. And that works
Mhm.
really, really well in a local environment, right? Because you
Yeah.
can vet those trusts. So think back in like early American history and the con man, the guy selling snake oil comes to town,
Yeah.
and as soon as he cons one or maybe two people and they figure it out, the whole neighborhood knows, right? Boom,
Right.
he's out.
Yeah.
He's got to go down the road. And that's what he does. He goes to another community that doesn't know him. He starts over with implicit trust. People come
Mhm.
in, oh, let's hear what you have to say. And then once that's been damaged, he's out. So you have a realm that you can actually vet people. All right. So what interestingly happens at the turn of the century is all of a sudden from an outside location becomes news of the world. All right.
Mhm.
And authorities placed on those news, like speakers, magazines, print material, books. Then, of course, comes radio and then TV and on now to, an iPhone right in your hand. Right. Um,
Yeah.
so we see what happens is all of a sudden outside influences come in. Now, a newspaper was 6 cents a day, right? 6 cents, and that was only for the middle to upper class. But once the penny press came along, these big rolls that just went poof, 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 spit
Yeah.
these things out. The newspaper came down to a penny. That's what they call it, a penny press, right?
Yeah.
And so Mr. Average Man now, Mr. Average Man could get a newspaper. The other thing that was happening at the same time was the railroad. So now it could be
Uh-huh.
distributed across the whole country, and all of a sudden we come together. Gabriel Tarde calls it a spiritual public. So in a local
Okay.
realm, you're tied in a material world. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah.
100 miles around where you live and work. You know,
Yeah.
stagecoach, or horse and buggy, right? That was your
Yeah.
world. Now your world becomes massively expanded in a way that's on a non-material level. This is a little bit
Mhm.
abstract, but it's really important. It's a non-material level, and your whole ideology is getting galvanized about events, experiences, and authorities and people that you don't know
Mhm.
and that you can't really vet. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So it becomes a
Yeah.
really dangerous time in America because the public mind can be manipulated. Now, let me just shoot to current events right now.
Mhm.
Or, well, not right now, but 1996. Before that, everybody got their news pretty much from the mainstream media. It hadn't split off.
Yeah.
So it was tacking left. And there was a discontent on the right, especially social conservatives, saying, we want something else. Up comes Fox News. Cable
Mhm.
news networks emerge at that time, right? Which basically bifurcates the public mind. Okay. So now we have two sides who are equally needed
Yeah.
in society, right? Two sides equally needed, but they're taking their public realm, right? When we talked about that spiritual public, one side's getting it from this over here, and the other side's getting it from this over here. So no longer do
Mhm.
we take our facts about the world from one place, or even the opinions, right? So,
Yeah.
and then you have this increasing rancor and just anger, like you have, politicians acting like 6-year-old kids at a food fight,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so
It's
that just filters. Those are the people, the authorities we're supposed to take the data from. And now, like, you can't sit down with your relative at a Thanksgiving meal and talk about politics, because if they're
right.
on the other side, it's walls up. You don't know what you're talking about. You have your facts here. It's totally, see, you see what I mean? They've actually
Mhm.
split the culture, that public mind that used
Yeah.
to unite us. And so that's sort of, I guess the other thing I want to mention is, like, think of an indigenous tribe.
Mhm.
They're very self-reinforcing. I call this the walnut. That local culture that's material is like a
Yeah.
walnut. You can't change it. Things that the things
Yeah.
they don't like that comes, they spit them out, right? But now with the advent of all these other influences coming in at all time and nothing to protect that culture, it can be easily fragmented. My
uh
other example besides indigenous people is the Amish. Are you familiar with the Amish
Yeah.
at all? And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep, we have
so they're
communities
carrying
here.
on what is a 19th century lifestyle in the
Mhm.
21st century, which is absolutely phenomenal. Now, I just looked at an Amish property not too long ago, and they don't put electric to the houses.
Right.
So they don't,
Yeah.
they can't, all the airwave things that come in that influence us, they're not a part of that. And so they
Yeah.
can they've been able to maintain their local culture in the midst of just massive cultural and sociological change, which is actually
Mhm.
phenomenal when you think about it. Like, how did they do that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's, so we have a community near here, and we will go shopping out there for baked goods and,
Uh-huh.
um, other stuff that they have,
Right.
and it is like walking into,
Yeah. Going
uh
back in time.
yeah, and it's very peaceful, and everyone's so nice, and
Mhm.
and yeah, it's,
A different world.
it is.
Because,
Yeah.
like, they almost really are living in a different world.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
so that's, so when you think about propaganda, nobody thinks about that stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's not how they think about how we're, and what I learned, especially in the second book, is okay, well, let me go back. Do you know who Graham Wallace is?
I've heard the name, but I can't remember who
Yeah.
it is right now.
Okay, he's a
Yeah.
Fabian socialist from the UK.
Okay.
Highly influential. He actually mentored Walter Lippmann, who was a
Okay.
journalist here, who was a acclaimed journalist for a long time. He helped start the London School of Economics, which was highly influential in policy making in the UK, just like the University of Chicago is here in economics.
Mhm.
So, anyways, he wrote. And this is the it's one of those wonderful things about being an author and just following your own mind. So, I'm reading his book, Human Nature and Politics, and in the first part of it, he says, if the holders of wealth want anything like a confiscatory tax or to change a tariff or anything else in the public sphere. He said, there's so much art and skill to be bought, all right, to
Yeah.
manipulate opinion, manipulate emotion and public opinion, that going forward, unless politics come up with some sort of big increase in money from somewhere, the whole layout of politics will be changed forever. Now,
Mhm.
the year he said this was 1908.
Oh,
Right,
jeez.
right. So you're like, whoa, wait a minute. Now, if that's true, if he's because he's boasting, right? He's saying that
Mhm.
if the rich people in any society, that's how he says it, if the rich people in any society want something, they have the means to pay to manipulate the population to get what they want. So they're going to
Yeah.
be driving them where they want them, right? And
Yeah.
so, I started pulling on those strings. I said, if he's correct, what I don't know anything yet, I still have to learn a lot more. So I kept
Mhm.
following that line of thought back into the 1800s with the rise of selling. And what I learned that the techniques that they were learning in selling a commodity, like initially flour was flour.
Yeah.
You can sell it, right? But then when you slap a brand name on it, now it becomes Pillsbury or General Mills, right?
Yeah.
And then now they
Yeah.
sell it. But so they started to learn techniques. Then they moved to selling events like P.T. Barnum and Buffalo Bill Wild West, and similar
Yeah.
things worked, right? And so then they went to selling the West as a destination. They boomed the West. That's what they were called, booming the West.
Mhm.
So they sold it, for land, but they also sold it for opportunity, a new beginning, the adventure of it, right? So those are
Yeah.
like, soft sells, right? To things that isn't a hard, adventure is a psychological thing, not an
Yeah.
actual commodity. And then they went to selling the World's Fair. Um, and now they moved in at the turn of the century, they started selling a president. They sold men and measures, politicians, and
Mhm.
policies. Okay. With the
Yeah.
same methods, virtually the same methods that they had used to sell all these other things. And so you start to see this rise of this technique that all of a sudden is very, very dangerous to society. Because if you can set like, and so McKinley was elected in 1896. That was his first term.
Okay.
You can fast forward that to the war, which was 1917. So roughly 20 years later, they were selling a war, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
That's
something really different, right? So all of a sudden,
yeah.
commodities all the way to selling a war, and you're using the same things. You're putting up authorities that people trust now,
Mhm.
whether it's a president or a university professor, right? You're
Yeah.
putting those through the news, right? You're acting like lots of people love and want to adopt this, so that's the social pressure. Um,
Yeah.
Experience is something that they did too. So how can you manipulate experience through the news, right? You think, well, that's kind of, what do you mean by that? So they would create news, right?
Mhm.
We called it stagecraft.
Yeah.
So P.T. Barnum
Yeah.
would say, hey, let's march Jumbo the elephant down Main Street, right?
Yeah.
We get free news coverage, but then it'll also talk about the fair, and we'll sell tickets for people, or circus rather. And
Yeah.
so that's not technically news, it's created news.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
fast forward to the 1920s and Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays sold cigarettes to women. Okay, so prior to that time, you were a bad woman if you smoked cigarettes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But so he took the, I believe it was the Macy's Day Parade, and
Mhm.
put his secretary and some of her friends in the parade. They marched to a certain designated area where he had photographers and newspaper men already ready. And then at that point, they rolled up their skirts, pulled out the cigarettes from the garter, and then they smoked torches of freedom so that they were equal with men. That's how he sold it.
Yeah.
You can be equal with men now. It's not a shameful thing to smoke cigarettes. And here's these organic women. Of course, there was nothing organic about it. It was all staged.
Right. Right.
Right? But
Yeah.
so people reading the newspaper say, wow, there's this group of women that are demanding access to cigarettes as an equality issue. Yeah. And so he played
Yeah.
on that. And it was part psychology, but it's also crafty and deceptive, which is what you just said earlier as the essence of that
Mhm.
whole thing, because it isn't actually news that we would say. It's
Yeah.
crafted and put specifically in there to manipulate and deceive you. So
Yeah.
that was stagecraft. That was actually the first fake news.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
First
makes
fake
sense.
news,
Yeah.
right? Back there.
Yeah.
And it was very, very valuable. The like P.T. Barnum, they knew how to use that because it was free advertising. It just got into the
Mhm.
news as a news story, versus you paying thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to get advertisement.
Yeah.
So free news and crafting a story and making it be easily digestible, even to writing up the story to give it to the editors to print, which they did, making it like a seamless thing, like a press release is today. Here, just put it in as
Mhm.
news. And so that really corrupts the let's let's say the marketplace of ideas, because
Yeah.
you can pay to do that, and you can get your thing in as news. It's very powerful because people think it's organic.
Right. Yeah. So there I used to work as a vet tech, and this was when I was a vet tech in Texas. Our animal shelter that I worked at um was getting full, and they called the news crew and had everyone load up 3 animal control trucks full of animals. And they said that they were taking all of these animals
To get
elsewhere
oh,
because the shelter is full. So they're like, "Oh, these other shelters had to bail us out. Like, please come adopt pets, blah, blah, blah." And then as soon as they stop filming, the newscast still is
oh,
there,
right. As
watching
soon as
them.
see you,
Yeah, and so they watch
right,
everyone unload the animals
put
and
them
put them
back in the
back into their
same
kennels,
shelter.
and that was the first time I
Mm,
realized, this was over a decade ago. This was the first time I'm like, so
hmm,
right in front of my face, the
hmm,
news is lying. Like, we're
mhm.
not even pretending to be honest about this
Right, and you're
with the
saying, like,
news crew there.
yeah, the news crew is just going like, "Yeah, this is what we do. This is part of."
Yeah. Yeah, and then it's like, okay, so we're pulling at the heartstrings of people to come
Mhm,
adopt animals. Well, maybe they weren't ready for an animal, and then they end up getting returned back to the shelter anyways if it's a
mhm,
situation like that. And, that just opened
mhm,
my eyes to not I don't believe anything anymore,
mhm.
because that's
Yeah,
just a local news station. Imagine what these bigger channels are
right,
doing.
right, right. Yeah, that's it's so nice for you to have had that eye-opening experience seeing that. If you go online and you do, like, rent a protest,
Yeah,
you can get just hire people. Like, here's the placards, 300 of you go out here. And of course, the way the news will frame it, it'll seem like a lot, of people, right? It doesn't have to be,
yeah,
just by the angle. And,
yeah,
and so then there's this, outrage. Actually, Edward Bernays said this. This was in his book Propaganda. He
mhm,
said, okay, going forward, a politician is never going to just bring up a policy move. Like, let's say he wants to increase or lower the tariffs on wool. All right. Here's
okay,
what he's going to do. He doesn't go out and pitch that. No, no, no. This is in the 20s now. He said, in one place, you're going to have these prominent businessmen go to a important meeting in cotton suits,
mhm,
boycotting wool. And then that'll get played up. That's a story. It's free advertising. And then he goes, it's stagecraft, just like we talked about. Then over here, you're going to have like your average. This is like the rent a protest. You get some
mhm,
people to go and just boycott or protest the fact that the wool is too expensive for whatever. They're small businesses. Then
yeah,
somewhere else, you're going to hire somebody to do surveys, and they're going to attest to the fact that the poor are suffering because they don't have wool socks and wool blankets. They're freezing in the winter. And so
yeah,
these things are going to be seeded into the environment. And while that's, percolating in the public mind, oh yeah, there's a problem. There's really like wool is way too expensive. Then the president comes out and pitches a reduction in the
yeah,
tariff. And I mean, so in the 1920s, he's saying this is how it's done. This is how it's done.
mhm,
It's totally manipulated. And then when you add to all that front groups, so are you
yeah,
familiar with like third party technique?
a little bit,
Okay, so let's give you an example.
yeah,
Um, in 1911, they wanted this was going into the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, right?
okay,
So in 1911, they created the National Citizens League for the Promotion of Sound Banking. So this is a front group paid for by the Eastern bankers who know that their name is mud. Anything attached to them will not get passed because
Mhm.
everybody can't stand Wall Street bankers at that point in time. So they make it a Midwestern group with just Midwestern bankers. So they're basically borrowing the authority of
Yeah.
Midwesterners who actually have some trust. And that's what I talked about. It's not facts and reason, it's trust.
Mhm.
We need to go back to that too. But so they spend $500,000 and they blanket the country with speakers and messaging material, simplified messaging bank, because who understands banking? So they simplified it, got that material all over. They hired experts to target message. Now remember, this is 1911, target messaging
Yeah.
for the South specifically and how it would help them economically. But it was different to the Northeast. They had a different message for them, different for the Midwest and West, so on. And so they
Mhm.
were doing segmented target marketing. This is all advertising a
Yeah.
bank. Okay.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
but anyways, you know, it's bringing, it's hiding the interest. Like again, if I can't come out directly and pitch my interest because it's self-interest. I want the bank.
Mhm.
Right. And so I
Yeah.
throw all this money over here to a front group that looks neutral, it looks unbiased, and it looks trustworthy to convince the American people. And that's called third party technique or a front group. So this group fronts for somebody behind them that
Okay.
they're hiding. So they put on a mask, they come over here, and then they present the material in a neutral way. The landscape now is just loaded with front groups. So unless you ask, where's the money coming from? I don't believe you,
Yeah.
because they can spin up. I mean, the money is so consolidated now, right? I mean, right. So the wealth and income gap is like this to
Mhm.
the highest people that, own things. Um, they have trillions of dollars to spin up front groups here and there and project their images over here. And they will actually attack themselves. And that's kind of going deeper. But, just, if your audience gets the fact that, there's a spiritual public, that it's using these simple things like experience, stagecraft,
Mhm.
authority, and what everybody else is saying and doing. And now with social media, that's where that what everybody else is saying and doing comes in
Yeah.
highly, right? Because they just have massive influence that way. They could just say, look at all these people that, and
Yeah.
that's where you're on a site and you're buying something and it says, so and so just bought in Alabama, and so and so, or as seen on, right? All these things are
Mhm.
advertising techniques, but just people have to really. This is going to be my second book. This is coming out shortly, and where
Okay.
I, lay out the advertising techniques
Yeah.
that put that whole thing together. Going back to Graham Wallace, so I could see how he, in 1908 he was boasting this. And again, if you've got I say we have the best ideas money can buy.
Mhm.
Right. And you and I, so we think we have free speech, right? We would say, we live in America, we have free speech.
Right.
All right. But
Yeah.
in reality, if I can't, if I can't get my message out if I don't have reach, right? It costs
Right.
a lot of money for reach, right?
Yep.
You're either gonna pay for advertising or you're gonna get free advertising on big platforms, which they do
Yeah.
because they reinforce their own messaging. And us down here, like a really tiny little amplitude of reach. And
Yeah.
like I would say to you, we don't have free speech because I mean
Right.
we can say whatever we want, but we can't reach the bulk of our countrymen.
Yeah.
We don't have the money. So the
Yeah.
people that have the money are the one reaching people. And they're the
Yeah.
ones dividing, by the way. I mean, it's intentional that
Right.
America is being fractured right now.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to tell you about my sponsors real quick. Sometimes I get on a roll cleaning or gardening, and I need a boost but don't have time for a meal. Big Fork Brand's pork jerky is the perfect choice to keep my momentum, offering high-protein snacks for on-the-go energy boosts. Not only do they offer pork jerky, but they also make pork sticks, bacon sausage, bacon hot dogs, and burger and hot dog sauces. Products come in a variety of delicious flavors, including Thai green curry and maple and brown sugar for the meat options, and gangster and Chicago fire for the sauces. I personally think the original flavor of the pork jerky hits just right after tackling a big chore. It's a little salty and very flavorful.
My discount code gives you 20% off your entire order, and it's currently the best deal available. Just visit bigforkbrands.com and enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout. Are you looking for a gift for a music lover, or maybe some apparel to show off your quirky side? Old Glory has you covered. With over 300,000 officially licensed items covering music, sports, entertainment, and pop culture, you're guaranteed to find the perfect item. They even have seasonal gear. My husband enjoys the Beatles and Led Zeppelin apparel, and I love the Billy Idol apparel. I even found items for my fellow plant enthusiasts. This family-owned superstore is known for their quality and customer service, offers free standard shipping on all orders, and orders are shipped the same day you purchase. My discount code gives you 15% off your entire order, and it's currently the best deal available. Just visit oldglory.com and enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout. Looking for a game-changing way to improve your health? Zevo Life is the world's most nutrient-dense whole plant, packed with over 50% plant protein, essential amino acids, fiber, and antioxidants. Harnessing the best nature has to offer, Zevo Life nourishes your body while driving your performance, vitality, and overall well-being. Each serving is a concentrated source of clean, well-balanced nutrition designed to support modern lifestyles, and just 1 teaspoon a day supports your gut, boosts energy, and promotes healthier skin and hair. It's no wonder that it's receiving rave 5-star reviews. Step into a healthier future with a 30% discount and a 30-day risk-free guarantee by visiting zivo.life and using my promo code. To support my show and to receive 30% off your entire order, enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout. Yes, so you just made me think about the two-party platform. A third party does not get the platform that Republicans and Democrats get, and
Right.
I truly believe that we would have an independent president or a president from a different party had they if they had the same level of platform as Republicans and Democrats.
Mhm.
But like you said, the division it's on purpose. They of course don't want to give a platform to someone who might have better ideas because that goes
Mhm.
against their agenda.
Right.
And I mean, I also believe that there's a lot more working together between Democrats and Republicans than we see. I think a lot of these fights are manufactured to
Mhm.
distract from other things, and it's just
Mhm.
gotten completely out of control.
Right. It almost looks it's interesting. What's your bracket? Like, are you, millennial? Are you, Gen Z?
I am an older millennial.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your, colleagues and or friends and neighbors and something,
Mhm.
you feel like they, see that? Like, most of them see
Yeah.
that, or is it just you? Like, because you're basically telling me it kinda looks like a stage show. You know what I mean?
You know, yeah. It
I can tell you
yeah.
something, which is amazing, as I'm going back in time, and so my book is about the big case study is the age of reform. So
Uh-huh.
at that time period, it's very interesting to study because it's very much like now. People were very disaffected with democracy. So you
Mhm.
had these monopolies running people, they were completely lawless. They were bribing the senators. There was a lot of corruption, and they were running the table on all the resources from the Civil War on. And so people were
Yeah.
losing, losing, and losing again. And it didn't matter which side they went to. And so they get to the turn of the century and they're mad and they're angry, right? And so
Uh-huh.
there's discontent there. Well, they usurp the discontent and they put a decoy leader. And Teddy Roosevelt was that decoy leader. And
Mhm.
he ended up, well, he was the leader of this third progressive party, if you're familiar. And
Yeah.
the progressive party ended up being just run over the cliff. So, they were funded by George Perkins, who was the right hand man of JP Morgan. So it was coming from the holders of wealth.
Mhm.
You think, why would they fund the Progressive Party? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, and
Right.
there's the reason for it. They don't want, they want to just manipulate it. They want to grab
Yeah.
that vein of anger and discontent, mouth the things that those people want to hear, and then neutralize it by taking it
Mhm.
slightly off. And the big thing at that time period, Roosevelt was saying over and over again, it isn't bigness of the trust that's a problem. It's whether they're just good and bad, and we can regulate that, okay? But the fact
Yeah.
is, bigness was a problem. That once you got to a certain size, you could run the table on many things, and you had way too much influence and money behind the scenes to control the politics. Okay,
Yeah.
so you see how you kind of diverted it,
Mhm.
they had to deal with the trust issue, and they had the anti-Sherman or the Sherman Act, the Antitrust Act, but
Yeah.
it wasn't getting used. And the people wanted that, and that's who he appealed to. And then he took it right over here. And so every
Yeah.
movement since, you'll see that, the John Birch Society, you see the Tea Party Society, and they're happening on both the right and left as well, by the way.
Mhm.
I'm just using
Yeah.
the right side for now. But
Yeah.
and so what surprised me is you could see these techniques being used for, like, they've been used for 125 years, and that Graham Wallace's boast was absolutely correct. They knew how they could drive the public mind at that time. And so you have to say what really has been going on um in, in a democracy behind the scenes for that entire time, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you have to start asking some really hard questions and taking a look at it. But what I did that was specific, I think, and different than most people is a lot of people look at history like from a geopolitical standpoint, or through the
Uh-huh.
lens of the great men, or from a sociological, cultural standpoint. And I looked at history and I said, I want to track one thing, this tool. Who was funding, like, who was using this tool? Where was all the
Mhm.
money coming from, right? In
Yeah.
different places. Like, who was funding this front group for the banks? You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so on, all through the thing. And you see that it's the moneyed interest, the bankers and the corporations that were, funding these, in many cases, great movements. And they were even funding ideologies. They were
Yeah.
funding ideologies, and that's a real mind bender for people. But Anthony Sutton's books, are you familiar with him?
No.
Okay,
No.
so he wrote three small little books, which I recommend for
Okay.
everybody.
Okay.
It's Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution, Wall Street
Okay.
and FDR, and Wall Street and Hitler. So at that time, the people that had all the money were really funding fascism. They were behind
Mhm.
FDR, supporting him, and they were funding the Bolsheviks. And so that's really mind blowing. He was a professor at
Yeah.
Stanford. He's gone now. Um, but boy, that'll really, really open your eyes to some things, about, what really is our history. Because here's another
Yeah.
thing. If you can control this ideological syndicate, which is what we're talking about, this spiritual public, if I control this with the newspapers, the prints, the radios, the TV, and who gets on and who gets off, which is what you just said, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
You can't get your voice out there, then they dominate, right? And so
Yeah.
you don't really have um, a freedom to change course, and and so the population gets swayed,
Yeah.
any way they want,
Yeah.
in a sense. But we're still thinking that we have a voice, we have free speech, and that the politicians are something that, that there's still men that are actually have some power, I think, is what I want
Right.
to say. When really, when it takes, what did Camilla, she raised something like a billion or trillion. How much did she
Yeah.
make? And it's like for months of a campaign. It
Yeah.
was an astronomical amount for a small time that she was running. And if it costs that much, you and I aren't getting our voice
Oh, no.
even
Yeah.
close to that platform.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just the because I was actually thinking about that. I'm like, how could someone possibly afford to be able to do this, you know? And
Mhm.
Um, so in Iowa, we have the caucus, and
Mhm.
so a lot of the
Right. Yeah.
people wanting to run for president, they stop and they'll do a
Mhm.
little tour in Iowa
Mhm.
before the caucus. So it's easy to see all these candidates,
Mhm.
but then like we went and saw Vivek Ramaswamy speak, and he was in like 9 different places in Iowa that day, and so
Oh,
you're
wow.
living on a bus or an RV,
Mhm.
so he has this giant RV. Just the transportation alone
Mhm.
to go do these rounds to
Oh, yeah.
try and get through Iowa caucus it costs so much money. His family living on a bus, to go to all these places and speak all
Mhm.
day. And I mean, who can afford just that, the transportation? So no small man is going to be able to run a campaign unless they can run it mostly on the internet,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
from local, making just a few spots, and
Mhm.
they're
Yeah.
gonna get drowned out by ads.
Right, right. Which is why you're saying, that these two entities, like people call it the uniparty, right? So it's a
Mhm.
uniparty. And so, that's where, politically, what chance do we have? Even, I read, I forget the name of I think it was Harold Ruggs was the name of it, but they were talking even on the early turn of the century. They saw this opinion making juggernaut.
Uh-huh.
Right? I mean, they knew that it was authorities, and if you could place the authorities, if you had control of everybody who got on the stage, right? So to
Yeah.
speak, and you could censor, like, for example, have you ever heard of Robert La Follette from Wisconsin?
No,
No,
no.
right? So
You're no.
he was a great reformer. I didn't either, right? Like,
Yeah.
wasn't in my social studies class, but he created his own political machine back in the day, and he fought, and he made a lot of difference in Wisconsin, and then she became the governor, and then he ran. Well, he almost ran for president, but Teddy Roosevelt edged him out. So the real
Uh-huh.
reformer, and Bill Kittle talks about this. He says, the Associated Press always just either ignored him, or he was a reactionary, he was a socialist, he was some sort of demonizing, castigating,
Yeah.
and so his message gets soured, in the minds of the people, and he can't get any traction. And so Roosevelt comes in, he gets pumped by the media, bam,
Mhm.
he becomes the de facto leader, but he shouldn't have been. I mean, if anybody should have gotten the reform, if anyone who was really the reform leader, it was La Follette during that era, and he just got edged
Yeah.
out because of this I get idea syndicate. And the other problem that we really have is we don't have a name for it. This thing that
Yeah.
I've taken almost an hour, you know what I mean, trying to explain what it actually is.
Right.
And if you just take
Yeah.
this limited conception of propaganda, it
Yeah.
doesn't get you anywhere, right? It
Yeah.
puts you in this little box that is completely there's tons of misconceptions in there that they're just lying to us. But they have this whole machine, this idea
Mhm.
syndicate, a public opinion making machine that we can't have access to, and it steers society where they want us to go, even to fighting each other. I mean, like they can
Yeah.
steer us towards civil war easily at this
Yeah.
point, right? Because how easy would it be? And if you know that European history of false flags or infiltration, and we can't be that naive to say there would be no infiltration. So if you have a protest and you want violence, you just infiltrate it with bad guys. You just pay criminal elements,
Yeah.
underworld elements, show up and just start smashing things or start killing people. And
Yeah.
then the other side will start shooting, and all of a sudden you have chaos. And then all of a sudden, oh, we need a militia in there. And all of us, and the dynamic
Mhm.
can change super quickly with that. And we're getting to a point where
Yeah.
it's right. It's getting
It's working its way there. Yeah.
working, right? And so,
Yeah.
people really have to learn. One of the things that I did with the first book is I created a little study guide with it, and this isn't
Mhm.
something I can teach your kids, right? That's sort of, you know what I mean? Like, you have to really understand that and share with them, because I'm saying
Yeah.
something really quite different about, all of, contemporary American history, to be honest, that you have to look
Yeah.
deeper. And so anyways, I wanted parents who were like either homeschooling, or you don't have to be homeschooling. You're just gonna say, this kid, for the most part of their life, depending on how long you can keep a phone out of their hand, which, I mean, God bless you if you're trying, right? Because I'm sure
Yeah.
the clamoring for a phone is just endless for these kids.
Yeah.
Um, and so they have something in their hand that can outrank you 24/7
Mhm.
practically, except when they're
Yeah.
sleeping. And so, you better prepare them to understand what is in their hand, right? And if they don't know
Yeah.
history, they are like a complete, they're completely vulnerable,
Yeah.
including ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I had an interesting conversation recently with a gentleman had written a book that was, talking a little bit, alternate history of America, and it
Okay.
gets really good. I won't name his name, but it gets very good reviews. 4,000 reviews, sold 300,000 copies. Now, I mean, I'm a writer. That's a good amount of copies,
Yeah.
right? I'm not there.
Yeah.
So, anyways, had a conversation with him, and I realized that even though he had written and spent a lot of his life in looking at picking up the pieces, and this is something I wanted to talk to you earlier too, is about truth. There is a truth lag, right?
Mhm.
When you think about it in society, like it's only like 10 or 15 or 20 years that the truth is allowed to emerge about any event back here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
the initial narrative is almost always wrong, and we kinda know that, right? We know
Yeah.
that you can't, like, if your kids are playing around in the basement and somebody, breaks a lamp, and they all go and you only find out about 3 days later, you go, "Who broke that?" And they're like, "I don't know." You know?
Yeah.
Right? And,
Yeah.
"Oh, it was a neighbor," or whatever,
Yeah.
Okay, it might take you a week or 2 weeks or a month or maybe not to find out the
Yeah.
truth. So think about complex geopolitical, things. Do you think we're gonna
Yeah.
find the truth like in a 24-hour news cycle? And
Yeah.
yet we're told, "Oh yeah, you know, it's this," right? And so
Yeah.
the first to define the narrative gets settled in the mind, right? And so
Yeah.
then the historical research will come through later. Like a lot of the stuff I did on Teddy Roosevelt, like he's a publicity president. They've done a lot of research on him, and he's not the mythological character that we learned in high school. And so,
Yeah.
so that truth lag is huge. So anyway, so this guy, going back to this guy, he's picking up the 25, 10, or whatever year truth lag truth, right?
Yeah.
Promoting it, and yet when it came to current events, I realized this guy cannot see. He cannot see he's being manipulated
Mhm.
because he hasn't learned the manipulation tool.
Yeah.
He learned the post history, the post initial event history,
Yeah.
and so he believed that, but currently he couldn't see. It floored me. I thought,
Yeah.
wow. I mean, so this is why what we're talking about today is
Mhm.
so important, because you can kind of see it, like you're going,
Yeah.
it seems like a stage show, for God's sakes,
Yeah.
you know? And that
Yep.
is one thing that, like Teddy Roosevelt, he always capitulated to the bankers behind the scenes, but he went into the Gridiron Club and he says, "By the eternal gods, I will, get you," and blah blah blah. And then somebody leaks it because it's a closed club, and all of a sudden it's
Uh-huh.
in the paper, and they're mortal enemies.
Yeah.
And you go, no, it's stagecraft,
Yeah.
right? Because he has to be, he's the decoy leader, so he has to be believable to be this arch enemy
Mhm.
of the same enemies, right? The enemy of my enemy is my friend,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so that solidifies that bond with Teddy Roosevelt as the fighter, and it just takes such small things to be able to imprint that into the mind of the public and then deceive them, which is the word that you started out the podcast with. That is absolutely, it is a deception, right? It's
Yeah.
seduction in a way. Let me see if I have I don't know if I do. I have a great quote. I don't think it's handy. It's over there. But Harold Laswell says, he says, the divine right of kings is over. Okay. And
Uh-huh.
he's so cocky. He's like, you wouldn't love, honor, and obey the kings. And so you can expect seduction. He says, you cast off your chains of silver, you're going to get chains of iron.
Mhm.
And propaganda is a concession to the willfulness of the age. Can you imagine that? You people can't do what we tell, or won't do what we tell you to do, and so we're going to manipulate and deceive you. We'll break the chains
Yeah.
of the divine right of kings. Okay, you're free from that, but now your future is deception,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is pretty stunning. He was like one of these great propaganda professors that got boosted. You know what I mean? He was
Mhm.
supposedly the one teaching us all about propaganda, but he was a propagandist and a sophist. He was a liar and a deceiver. But yeah, like sometimes they tell you the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
whoa, that's pretty
Yeah.
pretty pretty important right there.
Yeah. I when I'm talking to people that are upset, whether they're on the left or the right, it's more so people on the left are getting really wound up because it's a
Hmm.
Republican,
Right.
Republicans are in charge right now. I try to tell people, like, first off, believe anything you hear until you've looked into it from on both sides, and even that you might not really get
Right.
a full picture, but just understand both sides are doing it. So you might be thinking like the right is evil, but the left is just as evil. And the other thing is I notice like if you get on Twitter one day, everyone's freaking out about something and it's like if you wouldn't have heard this from somebody else who was upset, would this have suddenly made the entire country I mean,
Mhm.
people from all over the country are upset about something that to me it seems completely manufactured so
Mhm.
often. So then it's
Mhm.
like if you find yourself starting to get upset about something, ask yourself why you're upset about it. Because
Mhm.
if it's just because other people are telling you you should be, then
Mhm.
don't let it get to you,
Right.
but
That's the social pressure,
it's
right?
so hard for people to look at it from outside of the
Mhm.
box,
Mhm.
and I understand why it's so difficult when, like you said, we've got our phone
Mhm.
telling us what to believe basically
Scrolling
the
social
entire time.
media and then preferentially feeding you what you already believe. Right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
meme confirmation, you know what I mean? Little
Yep.
soundbite, and like, so my one of my goals this year is, basically to the forest for the trees, the whole versus the parts, synthesis versus sound bites.
Mhm.
Okay. Because the world is full of sound bites,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to say, okay, let's go way up here and let's look down on this, 20th century and let's see how this machine that convinces us and deceives us got created, started, and start connecting the dots. To me, if you look at the early 20th century, you don't even have to know the middle
Mhm.
because you can just extrapolate it out and you know where we are now and you go, oh my God,
Yeah.
right? I mean, this is
Yeah.
just the extension of this thing, and so I like, I talk about like a minimal viable knowledge, like a minimal viable product where they put out a software. It's not quite bug free, you know.
Mhm.
So you don't need to know everything, but if you know some critical things and can connect these critical things boxes or units,
Yeah.
then you can start to see the patterns, and then you go, wow, and again, and now that doesn't get us to answers, but another thing is my motto is true hope begins when illusions end. So this
Yeah.
idea that we're going to have either party save us is an absolute fiction, right? And
Yeah.
I use this story. There's a friend of mine who got really sort of interested in the plane that went down in the Andes Mountains. And do you remember that in 1972? There was a
Yeah.
movie made, and they ended up resorting to cannibalism. But
Yeah.
one critical junction in their journey was they're sitting around this broken radio that they'd put back together, and they're listening, and they hear the words that their search has been called off.
Yeah.
Right. So now, but that's the worst news that they could hear, but it was the absolute best because
Mhm.
now they're not the illusions broke. If they sit there and they wait, they die, right? Because
Yeah.
no one's coming. But because they could
Yeah.
hear that, they had to take different means, and they ended up saving themselves by walking out, right?
Yeah.
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 So like it's the worst news. Like they're not coming, neither the right nor the left. They have no reason. They are looting the country right now, right?
Mhm.
And giving us a sideshow to begin with. So so
Yeah.
they're masking the real problems that we have to deal with. And as soon as you snap out of that, now you can discuss real action. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? What does the populace do now that we know we can't be confused with what they're doing,
Right.
bouncing us back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish there was a way to get more people to see that because I think
Mhm.
it's gonna take a lot of people
Mhm.
to to get this to get us out of this mess.
I know. I know. Well, I now I'm just like, so you're talking to people and you're trying to relay that message, and hopefully, like, here's some books. Here's two
Mhm.
books, right? The second
Yeah.
one's coming out. You can maybe refer them to,
Yeah.
and then people that teach their kids. You got to teach their kids this because there is a body of knowledge of this.
Mhm.
It's completely different than if you go into, like, you go to the typical propaganda teachers or whatever, and you're going to see Hitler, the big lie, and you're not going to
Yeah.
see any of this contextual information that is really the better way to understand it. and we do need to come up with some kind of word, but
Yeah.
idea syndicate, I've used that. Idea bullies,
Yeah.
propagandopoly, which is a monopoly of propaganda. In
Yeah.
fact, Kent Cooper, who was the head of the Associated Press. Now that's a news gathering agency, so that's different than the news,
Mhm.
right? So you can see how it would be
Yeah.
expensive for a newspaper to put a reporter in all the world, right? So they
Mhm.
consolidated and said, well, this one agency will do it, and then we'll
Yeah.
sell it to you. We'll syndicate it. And he said that that is the most powerful monopoly in the world, to be
Wow.
able to tell one nation about another nation, to interpret that nation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, and he's right. And he writes in his book, the last chapter says, "Truth dot 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 the best propaganda." Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? And
Yeah.
he makes the case that the purer the stream, the easier it is to inject a little bit of taint and nobody know. So the Associated
Yeah.
Press billed itself as true and unbiased news, right? But even
Mhm.
people like when I read them in the early 1900s, they were already saying that the they weren't. They were always on the side of private property, like the laborer.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not there. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and if you can't prove it, it's like, "All right, well, I'm just gonna move on and not not fret about it." 'Cause where can the audience find your book that's out now? Uh-huh. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Sounds good. Is there anything else you want the audience to know? Yeah. 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 Yep. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that wasn't on it wa no. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. 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 Yep. Awesome. Well, this has been a really interesting talk. I really appreciate it because there's not a lot of people talking about this, and I think you provided some really good resources. So I'm excited. Yeah. 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 Sounds good. All right. Well, I will have this episode out I believe Sunday, maybe Monday. But I will keep in touch and let you know when it's out. So, yeah. Yep. Yeah. Mhm. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I think there's some hope. So, yeah. Yeah. Thank yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Yep. You too. I'll talk to you soon. All right. Bye.